the magnificent tiger, the beautiful beast facing extinction, how a lone campaigner is fighting to save the big cat, and that Dream Team commercial, how Ryan Giggs got to play with United's heroes of the past. All these stories and more tonight on How Do They Do That?
Good evening, welcome to the show. I'm starting tonight with somebody else, Jen.
Was it something I said, Des?
It might have been. Now, this is my temporary co-host, Mrs. Emily Nicholson. She comes from Carnforth in Lancaster, that's right, isn't it?
That's right.
And you've got a question for us.
Yes. How do they film underwater?
How do they film underwater? Film
Yes.
people underwater?
That's right.
If you look to your left, you'll see the man that's the best in the business at it, Mike Valentine. And I can tell you something else about Mike Valentine. He used to be my sound man on Grandstand, but that was a long time ago, but he's a specialist at something else now. So let's show you exactly how those underwater films are done.
Who do you think I am? Glug, glug. Click, click. Whoosh, whoosh. Glug, glug. Click, click, click. Whoosh, whoosh.
A nutter?
No, I'm Mike Valentine.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Who's he then?
You may not recognise the name, but you'll recognise his work. Mike Valentine is one of the foremost underwater cameramen in the world. He put the wet into wet, 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 and if it's got fish or dolphins in it, it's probably his. So how does he do it?
Safety is paramount. I could win an award for my filming, but an actor could easily lose their life. So every aspect of our shooting must be broken down and rehearsed first on dry land.
Preparation is everything. Whether he's filming in the wild or in a swimming pool in West London, the same care must be taken. When you're dealing with water, the smallest mistake could be fatal.
We're visitors to the underwater world, and the simplest things on land become very difficult underwater. Obviously there's no air, and we can't talk to each other, so everything we do has to be planned out in the finest detail.
Indeed, the kind of detail that's got to be seen to be believed. So how did we interview Mike underwater? We used the same technique Mike used to film this shaving commercial.
A dry shave is much less.
For a start, he didn't fancy filling his own living room with water, so he built a replica at the bottom of this diving pool. And that meant everything from the fireplace to the furniture had to be weighted down and firmly anchored in position.
Like pictures, you have to nail them to the set because they just float off the walls otherwise, basically, and they disappear to the top, you know. Sit there filming something, you see a plant come past their head, or a picture of Van Gogh or something.
So you could use Van Gogh's sunflowers if you were rich enough, but of course using real sunflowers would be out of the question.
If you use real plants, the chlorophyll in the plants reacts with the chlorine and makes the water go cloudy. So what we've done is go for silk plants and plastic plants, and hopefully that'll work.
Light is also a problem as it diffuses in water. Even at the bottom of this pool, without lamps, most colours would fade to grey.
Red is the first colour to disappear. By about 15 feet, red has totally gone underwater. So the reason I use lights underwater is not to lift the level of light so much as to replace the lost colour.
But how do you use electric lights underwater?
Well, the lamps are mains powered, but they use this very special heavy-duty cable. There are also special safety sensor circuits to detect if at all there's a problem with the lamp, immediately the power is turned off.
Once the room was ready, Mike weighed himself down to be interviewed. But you can't speak underwater.
So, how do I do this?
Mike's interview was pre-recorded. Then all he had to do was memorise it word for word.
It's not easy. We're visitors to the underwater world, and the simplest things on land become very difficult underwater. My interview is then played back to me on this underwater loudspeaker, and I mime to my own voice. At the third stroke, the time sponsored by NICAM.
But how did Mike breathe underwater?
Well, the secret on this shoot is to make it look as if I'm breathing normally, just the water itself. But obviously I've got to have an air supply, and we've got a special regulator fitted to a long broom handle. That means that my safety diver can be just out of shot, and when I ask for the air, he can just pass it to me. If I give this sign, he'll pass it to me now.
And while Mike suffered for his art, the camera shooting him was safe and dry on the far side of this window. But you don't get reinforced glass in the wild, so how did he get so close to these killer whales?
Now, we actually, in our small rubber boat, were able to go right behind the whale and film this. His tail was literally underneath our small boat, and if he'd wanted to, he could have easily flicked his tail and pushed us into the sea. But we were able to get right behind this massive fin, and I swear that he knew we were trying to film him, and he actually slowed right down and allowed us to get within 3 feet of his amazing fin.
Whether he's shooting along on the ocean waves or sitting at the bottom of a pool, water wizardry is all in a day's work for Mike Valentine. You might say, all in a Valentine's Day.
Under the ocean he goes.
Does it?
Glug, 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 glug. Out comes the camera.
Yeah.
Click, click. The mermaids float by. Whoosh, whoosh. It's a rare skill.
Well, it sounds it.
We've only been diving for 50 years. More is known about the dark side of the moon than the depths of the ocean. All I want to do is to share its hidden beauty with as many people as possible.
All right, Emily, got the answer there? OK. You on a hot date with Mike later now, are you? It won't be at all surprising, he's a rascal. Now, I must admit, I enjoy a game of golf from time to time, but I get a bit annoyed when I don't play very well, which is most of the time. I've stopped moaning about it now, though, because I've already seen the film that you're about to see.
This is a story about a man who has had something terrible happen to him, but he refused to let it stop him doing what he wanted to. And here's how.
There are 2 main passions in Richard Coates' life. One is golf, the other is engineering. He's combined them in an extraordinary way. Richard lost his hands 30 years ago in an industrial accident.
The first 2 or 3 weeks in hospital, you're sort of led there wondering how you're going to carry on with your life. You can't imagine what it's like to all of a sudden wake up from the accident and know you haven't any hands.
Richard is a building inspector with British Telecom. Off duty, he's an all-action sporting man, with good reason.
I felt that if I could only get into sport, it would be an outlet, and it would be a way of competing with able-bodied and disabled people. And it was a challenge at the same time.
Richard wanted to play hard and win, but he found his ordinary artificial limbs were not versatile enough, so he decided to do something about it. How? By becoming a welder and spending hours in his garage perfecting the different attachments needed to play his favourite sports. Golf was top of his list. Richard now plays off a 12 handicap. He achieved this with lots of practice and some bright ideas in his workshop.
My golfing attachment was quite difficult, really. I didn't have anything to go by, so I had to start from scratch. Basically, it's a piece of conduit pipe which I cut in half. When I'm playing golf, the handle would rest in the bottom piece. I would lift the lever up over the top, and then to hold it tight, I just push the lever down, clip it under there, and the handle's very firm and very tight.
Now, by altering the angle of the pipe, Richard can change the position of the club. Does it work? Well, the trophies speak for themselves. Now, stand by for a blast from the past.
In a moment, the Winter Games. But first, let's remember Long Island, New York, in June.
Smart young fella there. Anyway, it wasn't golf that got Richard to the 1984 Disabled Olympics in New York, but this. Thanks to another of his Heath Robinson inventions, the patent bowling attachment.
The ball goes in there, the lever comes down and holds the ball. When you bowl the ball, you pull on the lever and the lever comes out. The ball comes out.
Deceptively simple, but it helped him win silver and bronze medals, and when he returned to the 1988 Olympics, he won gold. How? with this table tennis attachment.
I feel now that I've achieved most things that I wanted to achieve. I can go up and play golf because most people have got a handicap and as a golf handicap, so therefore I fit in. I'm just a 12 handicap golfer, and I'm no different. I'm just a golfer with a 12 handicap. I'm not Richard who's lost both hands, I'm just me.
He's very accomplished and very resourceful. Now, still to come on tonight's show, flying saucers and cups and chicken on the wing, how dinner is served at 30,000 feet.
Saving our wildlife, how one brave undercover agent is risking his own skin to save the tigers.
And bringing a dream team to life, how that television commercial united the very best of United. Now, how is it that one person can apparently have the power to make someone else behave like a complete loony in front of millions of television viewers? Like our producer. Actually, I'm talking about hypnotism, which is currently the rage not only on television, but in live shows all around the country. To explain what hypnotism is and how it works, please welcome psychologist Dr. Arik Sigman. How are you? Good. Tell me about those stage hypnotists on television sometimes. How do they get people to do those really crazy things, stupid things?
Well, people don't do things they don't want to do. You cannot hypnotize somebody against their will. And really, there are very few people who are terribly hypnotizable. It's a very mysterious and special talent, but it actually isn't the hypnotist that has a talent, it's actually the person who's being hypnotized. Just as some people are very good at meditating or even praying, turning inward, not actually paying attention to any distractions, some people have that special talent, and the hypnotist can bring that out.
What sort of percentage of people can be hypnotized, do you think?
It's difficult to say. I'd say very deeply hypnotized, probably 10%, and then maybe another 30 or 40% who possibly can be hypnotized moderately. Yeah. And there are some who just cannot be hypnotized at all.
Right. Tell us about some of the methods. How does it work? How do you do it?
Well, there's a lot of emphasis on technique. People think there must be a special technique, but in fact, there isn't. I can give you an idea of the sort of things we see on television. I think the classic approach we've all seen in the cinema is, of course, the dangling pendulum like this.
You're not going to get me with this, are you?
No, we need you for the rest of the program. You'll have to stay fully awake. And then simple things like this. The doctor takes his pen out of his pocket and says, stare at the pen. Again, the similar thing, focusing on something. That's the real key. Or instead of using vision, using sound. So you close your eyes, and what you can do is have somebody listen to a rhythmic sound, again, monotonous. Or just to the sound of my voice, for that matter. The key is to make somebody focus on one thing and ignore everything else.
Yes. Now, you can't show us on television, can you, actually putting somebody under?
No. In fact, there's the Hypnotism Act of 1952, which actually forbids me from showing you how I hypnotize someone. So what I've done is to hypnotize Dylan, who's up in the audience with Jenny, who's been looking after him. Jenny, could you please bring him down?
Sure.
Dylan, open your eyes and walk down.
Just come down.
This is sort of one you prepared earlier, is it?
I have indeed, yes.
Right.
Okay.
Here's Dylan.
Sit down in the chair here. And relax. And just go to sleep. Deeper. And just relax. Fine.
Arik, is Dylan fully hypnotized now?
Yes.
Right, now can you just show us some of the things that you can do?
Yes, one of the things that hypnosis is used for, of course, is anesthesia. That in some countries, they actually use hypnosis to do very, very serious abdominal surgery. Sometimes even here, to do tooth extractions. Now, that's the sort of thing that's a little bit convincing. I don't think people pretend that they don't feel pain. Dylan, what I want you to do is to make your left hand rise slowly. Your left hand rise slowly. That's it, right there. And I want you to make your left hand go completely numb, with no pain, no feeling, no sensation, neither hot nor cold, nor anything else, utterly numb, with no sensation whatsoever. Now, as you can see here, this is not a painless thing, Jenny. And just to prove to everyone else.
Ouch, yes.
Okay. You feel absolutely nothing in your left hand, Dylan. Nothing whatsoever. It's utterly numb. Now I want the feeling in your left hand to return, as per normal, keeping your eyes closed, deeply asleep, but your left hand having full sensation. Again, your eyes completely closed and relaxed, deeply asleep, completely relaxed, just letting go. Now, as we can see here, Jenny, we have some fruit.
Looks like onions to me.
Dylan, I'd like you to keep your eyes closed, and I'd like you to reach here with your hand, and you can take a nice cock's apple here. You're savoring a cock's apple, and you're allowed to take one bite now, one small bite, sweet and tart, making you salivate, making your tongue tingle, sweet and tart.
Eric, what's going on in Dylan's mind, in his brain, that makes him think that that's an apple?
What actually happens, it's still very mysterious, but scientists are narrowing in on a couple of general things. The first thing is that the left half of the brain versus the right half. The left half is the logical side, the side that analyzes, judges, is critical, and is on guard all the time. The right half of the brain here is the part that actually helps you imagine things. It's the creative side. And what you try to do when you hypnotize somebody is to, in fact, distract the left side and gain the advantage so the dominance shifts to the right side, and that's the side that takes over. Yeah. At the same time, the entire top of the brain, both left and right side, are the thinking parts, the thing that distinguishes us from animals. And what you want to do is to, in fact, inactivate this as much as possible and make you function at a much lower level, at the lower part of the brain, the basic part that deals with things like breathing, heart rate, basic things that really don't take much thought.
What about for people that smoke, that are hypnotized? I mean, how does that help them?
What you want to do is to avoid what normally happens. If you're a smoker and I say to you, you must stop smoking because it's bad for you, it's expensive, you mustn't do it, you'll find lots of rational reasons to parry each one of my suggestions that are unpleasant. If you're hypnotized, instead of this part of the brain rationalizing away my ideas, I nip in behind the defenses and get the suggestions in before you've had too much of a chance to actually analyze them and to dismiss them.
How dangerous can it be? Can you plant criminal thoughts?
No. To make the answer simple, you cannot make somebody change their moral or ethical code.
There's a good part of the brain that protects you then, obviously.
Yes, it's called the conscience, and it doesn't go away when you're hypnotized.
All right. Now, what about Dylan here? What are we going to do with him? Wake him up and...
I think we'll have to, or else you and I'll have to carry him out of here.
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan, I want you to lower your left hand now. And when I count from 1 to 5, I want you to open your eyes, feeling completely relaxed, just as you were before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open your eyes, move your feet around, your hands. Feeling okay?
Yeah, fine.
Dylan, can I ask you a question? How was that apple? You took a bite of apple. Did you enjoy it?
Well, I got a taste of onion in my mouth, but there was an apple at the time.
There's a bad taste in there now, is there?
Yeah, I don't like onions, so...
Nobody does in that way, I tell you. But could you have protected Dylan from that?
Yes, I could have suggested that he tasted mint or apple or anything else, but I thought it more ethical, as it were, to simply let him understand fully what's happened.
Yeah. And can anybody learn how to hypnotize?
Yes. Within an hour, you could be as good a hypnotist as me if you were given the right kind of instructions. What you could do with it therapeutically takes many years of training, but to hypnotize someone isn't very difficult.
Well, it's been very interesting. Dylan, thank you very much, and a special thanks to Dr. Eric Sigmund.
Now, I don't know about you, but when I catch a plane, apart from the initial excitement of the takeoff, I don't think there's much to look forward to other than the landing. So it's always a bit of light relief when the flight attendant brings my little plastic package of food. It's like Christmas, all that gift wrap.
Yes, but how do they get all that food on board, particularly for long-haul flights? Big airlines like British Airways can't turn a flight back because someone's forgotten the salt or they haven't got enough bread rolls. They have to make sure it's absolutely service as usual for 65 million meals a year. How do they organise that one? The biggest knife and fork job in the world. This 747 is carrying more food than each of us would eat in a year. Where does it all come from? How does it all get there? These are BA's Heathrow kitchens, covering an area the size of 4 football pitches.
And these tall-order chefs have to feed a non-stop production line where there's something always cooking. Hot or cold, economy or first class, there has to be enough. You can't tell a passenger to eat elsewhere once you're 30,000 feet up. The meals are placed on trays and loaded onto trolleys. But where have the trolleys come from?
Well, since their last outing, our old friends, the in-flight trolleys, have been taken for a ride on this power and free overhead conveyor, a high-tech contraption that delivers them to the kitchen by the scenic overhead route.
Back in the kitchens, the steaks are sizzling for the business and first-class customers. Most of the food is cooked here, but some ready-prepared meals come from outside suppliers.
Meet the Mustang, an automatic equipment stacking and delivery service. Punch in the code number of what you need, and this gliding genius supplies it quicker than you could grab them from a cupboard and without dropping anything. 50 cups required, 50 cups delivered.
And here's a comforting thought. Whatever class we fly, we all get the same gravy.
While that's cooking, the cutler is on its way. This snappy machine sorts knives from forks from spoons by grading them according to length and whizzing them into their respective trays like a giant pinball machine.
The trolleys are ready and loaded with food. The door of the plane is 18 feet above the ground. How do they get it all on board?
Well, they've got a special machine for that too, mounted on the frame of a lorry. It's a hydraulic hoist. Everything's in that container, from smoked salmon to salt and pepper. One heave of the hoist and it's chocks, potatoes, meat and gravy away.
And so flight BA067 takes off. Destination Nairobi, Kenya. The crew have got a busy 8 hours ahead of them.
We're going to start meal service. We've just got a wine round to do first, and then we'll commence with the meal service in about 15 minutes.
The convector ovens are switched on. This is what all the preparation, assembling, sorting and delivering was for. It's the moment of truth, the point of delivery. This is what's going on behind the curtain while we're wondering who'll be served first. These ovens take just 30 minutes to heat hundreds of meals, and the racks they're heated on are then insulated to keep them hot. While in first class luncheon is being served, in economy it's grub up, the first of 2 meals this flight.
On the flight deck, the pilot, co-pilot and engineer are making sure that each course is on course. They have to eat too, but have different dishes as a precaution against food poisoning. But who gets first choice?
Well, strictly speaking, I suppose the captain, as the commander of the aeroplane, could decide first and then the second in command, but we're not quite that formal. Jeff is flying the aeroplane today, so he chose first. John's the engineer, and he chose second, and I'm quite happy to eat whatever's left.
In first class, they may have their feet off the ground and their heads in the clouds, but right now it's their stomachs that matter. They've paid that little extra to be served individually with that special flourish and that special garnish. There's always time for a drink. The amazing thing is that there's time to serve it. And here come those versatile trolleys again.
But there's no rest when you're looking after 400 passengers. Any leftover bits of food are chucked away. It's the one and only flight this croissant will ever make. But the cups and flying saucers, cutlery and trays are kept.
The plane touches down in Nairobi. 8 tons of equipment are unloaded and taken to the nearby catering centre. It's into the wash with the grubby napkins and dirty table linen. The process of preparation starts all over again, and they are restarched and restored to their former freshness. Equality at last. All classes of dirty plates, crockery and cutlery come together on this conveyor belt to the jet washer, and they emerge sparkling clean and sterilised.
And in the Nairobi kitchens, another food round is underway. Another miracle of the loaves and fishes. In this case, succulent kingfish. Wherever possible, the airline makes use of local delicacies. It all looks very tempting here. In fact, to make sure these beans are ready in time, they're kept under floodlights to speed the growing process. Cakes, pastries, gâteau, mixing, baking, icing, decorating. Maybe the sun can take a rest, but for everyone connected with in-flight catering, those meals just have to keep on coming.
Beautiful, dangerous, independent, magnificent. All these words can describe one animal, the tiger. In fact, as wild cats go, they're pretty amazing. But sadly, some greedy individuals don't think so. They would rather see them dead than alive.
Unless something drastic is done, and quickly, the most wonderful of big cats could be extinct by the end of the century. Luckily, the fight is on. One man has taken stock of the situation and is risking his neck to save the tiger. Here's how he's doing it.
Crusade for a cat. 95% of the world tiger population has been wiped out this century. The most accurate estimate puts the remaining number at barely 5,000, and that's falling by 2 every day.
Tigers are in desperate trouble, and the big problem is poaching for tiger parts, which are used in the Oriental medicine trade. And quite simply, unless this problem is solved and the trade stopped, tigers are going to go extinct. And what we desperately need is more public attention and awareness of this problem so that the governments concerned feel pressure to do something about it.
Michael Day is the founder of the Tiger Trust, an organisation prepared to do battle with the animal's ruthless enemies. Michael even risks his own life, operating undercover to prove who's behind the slaughter. How does he do it?
Well, having identified a trouble spot or an area of illegal activity, whether that's poaching, whether it's smuggling, or whether it's trading, we endeavour to infiltrate those trouble spots with cameras in order to get hard visual evidence to bring back to show the world. Well, cameras these days can be miniaturized, and I've developed a little skill to be able to hide these in a variety of different places. I've got one in a hat, I've got another one that peeks through a shirt button, I've got another one in a blazer. In fact, it's really sort of up to the imagination as to where you can actually hide these things these days.
Using hidden cameras, Michael filmed the horrors of China's Hangdao Reserve. This place is supposed to breed tigers for conservation, but Michael found these bones and the mutilated remains of tigers in cold storage, and that could only mean one thing.
I was absolutely sickened because I'd at last found the conclusive evidence that I needed that proved beyond any doubt whatsoever that this tiger farm was in fact slaughtering tigers to produce the bone material for highly lucrative international trade.
In China and other Far Eastern countries, every part of the animal finds a customer. Its femur is supposed to be a remedy for rheumatism, the tail for piles, the paws for headaches, and the eyeballs are supposed to enable you to see in the dark. Every part of the animal is valued once it's dead. The biggest problem is overcoming superstition and educating people who see the creature solely as the raw ingredient for potions or delicacies. In Taiwan, a bowl of tiger penis soup costs £250. The Taiwanese believe it's a powerful aphrodisiac. 2 tigers are killed to make 1 bowl of soup for a dozen men.
I've spoken to a number of Chinese pharmacists in China, in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and indeed in this country. Nobody that I've spoken to has given me any grounds to believe whatsoever that these products work. In our view, it's absolute nonsense.
The Siberian tiger is the largest species, hunted primarily for its skin. In the 3 million square mile wilderness that it inhabits, probably only 150 of these beautiful beasts remain.
The key problem, basically, is the breakdown of law and order in the Russian Far East and the mass influx of illegal immigrants coming over the border from mainland China who are raping the wildlife structure there. Everything from plucking ginseng from the soil to slaughtering tigers across the face of it.
A hotel room in Taiwan. The trade is illegal here too, but Michael's hidden camera proves it's flourishing. How does he infiltrate the places where illicit trading is still going on?
I get access by blending into the background and posing as a trader. I pretend that I'm part of the business, pretend that I'm interested in buying, and the traders are always interested in making money, and my money is as good as anybody else's as far as they're concerned.
If the traders discovered what Michael was up to, he'd get no more mercy than the tigers, but he's even prepared to provoke them to get the evidence he needs.
So I said to him, well, you know, this could be anything. This could be pig bone. And he got very angry and very indignant and snapped his fingers and sent two of his henchmen into the back of the warehouse. And they came back with these sacks, and they tipped the sacks onto the floor of his shop and proceeded to assemble a complete tiger skeleton from head to tail.
Michael's crusade is getting results. Film like this led to public pressure, which gave President Clinton little choice but to impose trade sanctions on Taiwan. And in November last, at the Conference on International Trade in Endangered Species, China agreed that the sale of medicines and products containing tiger parts should be stopped.
Well, thanks to Michael and those like him who've been doing this investigative work, there is now a glimmer of hope, because what they've done is produce the evidence that has been used to put pressure on countries like China and South Korea and Taiwan that are involved in this trade to finally take some of the measures that are necessary to stop it. And if tigers do survive, then Michael and those who've been doing this very dangerous investigative work are going to deserve a lot of the credit.
The tiger is a great symbol of the fragility of wildlife. And if I personally, through work with the Tiger Trust, can save the tiger, then I'll consider that I've paid back a certain debt for my time here on Earth.
Well, Mike Day's with us tonight. This is risky business you're involved in. How did you get involved in it in the first place?
It was about 4.5 years ago, and I was researching and filming tigers in the rainforests of southern Thailand. And they were being poached right from under our noses, and we just got fed up and decided rather than continue our research and filming tigers, we'd film the people that were killing them and follow the trade routes wherever they led.
Now, obviously, Mike, some of these people are after you, aren't they?
Yes, it's the old theory, you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, and of course we rub the wrong people up the wrong way a great deal of the time. There's a contract still out of my life in Thailand and in northeast China. I'm certainly a persona non grata. But we need to do this. We need to do this work to explain the urgency. This isn't a question of conservationists ranting and raving. This is a tragedy unfolding in front of us. And what we could be witnessing here is the extinction of the magnificent tiger.
What about that conference that took place a couple of weeks ago? Did that do any good, do you think?
Well, the Tiger Trust actually started the ball rolling back in Washington in March of 1993, so we're very encouraged that it's come this far. But in our view, it could go an awful lot further, and we'll be monitoring this new resolution very, very closely and hoping that the signatories to that live up to their stated objectives.
The camera works good.
Yes, they're pretty small, aren't they? In fact, I could be filming you right now.
Are you?
Yes, I am. If you look over there, you'll see.
Cheeky boy. So you are. Yes, it works, doesn't it? Nobody's going to pick that up. Where is it actually, the camera?
It's actually hidden here in the just in the breast
blazer
pocket.
badge.
Yes,
more or less.
The head of the camera actually is probably smaller than a pinhead.
That was above. How do you see the next, say, 4 or 5 years for these animals?
Absolutely critical. The Global Tiger Forum in Delhi, held in March of 1994. Decided that there are now probably fewer than 5,000 tigers left. They're being killed at the rate of 2 a day, and that is escalating. So clearly 2 a day, 730 a year, certainly within the next 5 years, if this trend continues, they'll be wiped out.
Good heavens. Well, you're doing very valuable work. There isn't a viewer, I'm sure, that doesn't back you absolutely to the hilt. So continue to protect the tigers for us, and most of all, too, protect yourself, eh?
Thank you very much.
Michael Day. Now, most of us will know who this is. Ryan Giggs, of course, one of our most popular footballers. I mentioned him not so long ago to another of soccer's greats.
He's a very nice lad, and he's very sensible, and I think he's planned his life ahead, and he's not affected too much by all the adulation. It's hard not to be, because you see people, thousands of people coming at him all the time, but he's a very nice lad, very sensible.
And you've played with him at long last.
Yeah.
On the advert.
I can't believe that. How did they do that?
We've got a programme that will tell you in due course,
Sorry.
Bob. Yes, Bobby was talking about that ad, of course. Many of you at home also wanted to know how they did it, judging by your letters, that is. So here's how.
Just imagine their greatest ever sound. Greg throws it out to Giggs, and Giggs pushes the ball inside to Crerar, and a header back to Styles. Styles forward to Johnny Carey. Now to Charlton. Oh, a long one, way out to Giggs. A beautiful pass. Giggs now with that lovely footwork into Violet. Violet now switching the play over towards this right wing. And he finds Copple. Copple. He's got Charlie Mitten in front of him. And he finds Mitten with that lovely side foot pass. Dennis Law beats one. He beats two. Now here's Best.
For Ryan Giggs, it was an impossible dream that came true, to play alongside some of Manchester United's greatest stars of the past. Last year, football history went into that time warp when he was asked to appear in a commercial for a new brand of football boots.
What we had to achieve was imaginative and innovative advertising that captured the imagination of the soccer player and soccer fan.
The advertising agency given the mammoth task of bringing the dream team together was British company Low Howard Spink. But how did they come up with such a unique idea?
At the time, fantasy football was something which was very live. It was in all the newspapers. And the creative team very quickly began to wonder what it would be like if they could bring a fantasy football team, a Manchester United team, to life.
But how did they choose the dream team in the first place? Simple, by asking the experts, the fans. But from thousands of supporters, only one, with over 3 generations of Manchester United worship in the family, was finally chosen to pick the dream team. So how did he do it?
I sat down with all the books that we've collected over the years and did lots of research into it with my eldest son, who's 13, who put me right on a few things. And we looked at players not only that he'd seen play and that I'd seen play in the 60s, 70s and 80s, but players that I hadn't seen play in the 40s and 50s, looking at the statistics and the records of their achievements and what the opinions were about them at the time.
And this is the team Richard finally selected after 3 weeks of research and arguments. It was decided he should leave out any of the great players who were tragically killed in the Munich air disaster of 1958.
With the team selected, appropriate film of the players had to be found. The producers spent more than 8 weeks looking through hundreds of old matches, searching for small clips of action with the right moves, which could then be cut together as one continuous sequence of play, by men seemingly on the same team, on the same pitch, at the same time. The huge time span between the various clips presented special problems. Some footage was black and white, some players wore white shorts, others black. This would be solved later. But the biggest headache was that each opposition team was completely different. So how could they find one that matched?
Action, guys! Get in there on it!
They created their own by recruiting members of the Wimbledon youth team who, with Ryan Giggs, were filmed in total secrecy at Selhurst Park. Here they had to reenact moves to match those of the opposing players in the original old clips. But how did they know exactly where to place the players?
We had a camera that was linked to a computer which was recreating exactly the original move that was done maybe in 1950 or 60 by the film cameraman at the match. Our film camera was linked to a computer. It would do maybe a 2, 3, 4, 5 second move. Within that move, the opposition had to tackle, chase, run, fall over, whatever we asked them to.
How did they get their movements so precise? They began by having the players watch the original clips and then mimic the exact moves that their counterparts had made up to 50 years earlier. The players then had to repeat these moves until they were perfect. But what about that now famous Ryan Giggs goal? How did he do this? Not easily. It took even the great Giggs over 5 hours to score the perfect shot.
With the filming complete, the next problem was to put the dream team, the new opposition and Ryan Giggs together. So they called in Harry, a £500,000 computerized editing system. It turns the operator into an artist, able to paint and retouch images into almost any form. The first player to challenge Harry was another Harry.
This is Harry Gregg, and with him we had to colorise him and put him into a present-day background with a modern crowd, a modern net, and, of course, green grass.
They did that by electronically building the scene layer by layer. Layer 1 was an empty stadium shot earlier. Layer 2 was the new crowd shot at a real game, painted into Layer 1, including the computerized camera move. And layer 3 was Harry Gregg, removed from his original film by using a mat, which isolates the image, allowing it to be cut out and taken from its original background. To make Gregg the right colour, another mat was used to separate his clothing, and the colour green was added frame by frame. Mats also solved the problem of Steve Coppell's shorts. Originally black, they were replaced by white ones from a mat of a new player's shorts, filmed running earlier at the same angle. Coppell and the crowd were then placed onto this shot with the opposition at Selhurst Park.
But what about this shot? It has everyone wondering how they did it.
This shot of Best, Giggs and Charlton was probably the most difficult shot we did. It involved taking some old footage of Best and Charlton hugging each other, separating them and placing Giggs in the middle so he looked like he was amongst them.
How? By removing the heads of Best and Charlton cut from mats of their original footage and placing them onto the bodies of 2 Wimbledon players, repeating their movements, wearing wigs and hats to give them the same head shapes. But it wasn't easy. Bobby Charlton's face originally was obscured by Best's arm, and to cover it, a section of his chin had to be cut and added, frame by frame. This shot alone took over 6 days to complete and a further 600 hours of work for the entire commercial. But the final result will live in football fans' memories forever.
And now he's found it! Oh, the beautiful goal!
Their greatest ever side. Giggs would be in it.
What a team. Well, that's all for tonight. On next week's show, Stars in Nappies, how they get those performing babes to be cute on cue. We'll see you then. Good night.
Good night.
Plasma viscosity, liver function, serum paraproteins and coagulations.
What is this? The Starship Enterprise?
This is a hospital which runs an efficient service.
I've just discovered a patient in a locked room that's been in this hospital for 3 months.
We've got him on economy 7.
Sometimes with deadly consequence.
Now we just press the button marked prognosis.
Health and Efficiency returns. Friday at 8:30 on BBC1.
The music is optional.
Did you ever hear the tale of Candy Kitten who fell from a 9th floor balcony but lifted the hearts of a nation? Or did you miss the story of Gizmo who went under in the theatre but starred on the telly? Or do you remember the adventure of Sid the Seagull who was quite happy swimming about but wouldn't fly? Well, for more shaggy dog stories and puppy dog tales, join me and the staff of Harmsworth, yes, for Animal Hospital Week, Thursdays at 8 o'clock on BBC1.
Your Point of View aired once again now on BBC1 by Paul Heine.
Hello, fool that I am. I thought that the last few days had been a time of peace and goodwill to all men. More like 7 days of anger and fuming. Only turkeys had it worse than Christmas programmes this year. Take Christopher Hall and Jill Beresford. They reckon the BBC stuffed them.
Being fans of Patricia Routledge,